All right, let's call today's Public Infrastructure, Environment, and Sustainability Committee to order. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from September 28th, 2020?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes indicate by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Any opposed, nay? Any abstentions? All right, the minutes are approved. I didn't get any requests for anything currently on the consent agenda to talk about.
Council President,
Yes.
I was hoping, actually, sorry about the delay on this, but I was hoping we could pull off ice kickers from the streets department if there's somebody on the call that can go over that.
Okay. Is there anyone on the call at the moment that can talk about ice kicker?
Yeah, this is Clint. I'm on the call.
Yeah, go ahead, Clint.
So the street department's requesting approval for a value blanket to not exceed $100,000 annually to purchase the a lot of feedback there.
Keep going.
Does that answer the questions there, Councilmember Burke?
I didn't hear anything. If you could repeat it.
All right. The street department's requesting for a value blanket contract to purchase ice kicker. The contract's worth $100,000 annual purchase.
Okay. I have a question. So, what is this product? Is it salt that we use on the roads?
Ice kicker is a salt that has mag chloride in it, and this mag chloride is a product that it's the de-icer that we already put on our roads. So this salt has mag chloride that's already incorporated into it, and we use it in certain situations where downtown mostly. The other products we use are, of course, de-icer, which is mag chloride, and then salt with sand in it.
Okay, so I have two questions about this. Does this have any negative implications to our river and toxicity in that matter? And then the second one is, does it do anything detrimental to the street surface itself?
Well, specifically, I couldn't speak to the effects on the river. The products are used nationwide by their industries. I can provide the MSDS and that information. I would just say that we do use these products sparingly. Our city's under permit for the PM10 routes where we track and document and then provide a report annually to SCAPCA for how we do our snow plowing, what products we put out, the amount of materials that then we sweep and we collect, and then we reconcile all that in that annual report.
Okay. I guess I just would love to see, I understand that other cities might use this, but I'd just like to make sure that this is actually the most environmentally friendly and sustainable products that we could use. Is there a way to get any sort of information around other sustainable products or environmentally friendly products, just in case this one isn't the top notch?
I can provide information for tools that other cities use, absolutely.
Yeah.
That would be awesome. Thank you so much for the info.
Yep.
And I'm not an expert on this, Councilmember Burke, but I do remember from earlier when I started on City Council that we did do some rigorous testing of all the de-icers and what had the least impact on the river, and I think that's the products that we're using now. So that I think happened
Awesome.
before Clint was in charge of streets, but we did go through that.
Okay, yeah, if somebody could send me that, that would be really helpful, just because I'm not familiar with all the products, so that would be good.
Yep. Great. Thanks, Clint. So we have some guests here from the school district. Dr. Mark Anderson was going to give us a little bit of an overview. Some time ago, the school district made a request for the city to share in the cost of basically completely redoing North Cook Street near our new library and the Northeast Community Center and the newly built junior high. And it's part of the collaboration between building the library and the junior high in the same building. And so it's a complete redo and it's basically going to turn the street into almost a pedestrian plaza. There'll still be some vehicles going through that. But I asked Dr. Anderson to present to the rest of council what the conceptual drawings are and what the ask is of the city. So, Dr. Anderson, I see you there.
Very good.
And
well, thank you very much, Council President Beggs and other members of City Council. Yes, we've been working on this collaboration with the city as part of the new Hilliard Library, the Shaw Middle School rebuild, On Track Academy, as well as working closely with the Zone and the Northeast Community Center. So we'd be glad to share with you kind of the concept that and the design that has been developed and answer any questions that you might have.
okay.
So I will share a PowerPoint here with you. Can everyone see that?
Yep.
Yep. Very good. So Home and Cook Street, as Council President Beggs said, is a key part, we think, to making the entire area up there a campus feel for access for everyone in the area to have easier access and safer access to all of the recreational, educational, medical kinds of opportunities that are there for the Northeast community. So the concept is to try to create a community campus that's pedestrian friendly, that connects our students and families to the services that the Northeast Community Center has, as well as to connect all of those who are on the other side of the street with like the library, the new library that we're building, along with all of the educational aspects. Joining me today, I have Greg Forsythe, who's our Director of Capital Projects, and Ty Miller, who is from Integris Architecture. As you know, Integris is designing all of the libraries for the city of Spokane, but Ty and her team have been specifically involved in this campus concept since the beginning, and Ty has facilitated a lot of different groups meeting over the last 2 years to plan this. And we have several partners involved. Of course, the library system, we've had this on the agenda of our City District Partnership Policy Committee, which Brian and Lori are members of. Northeast Community Center has been a planning partner, along with Integris Architecture, AHBL Engineers, and most recently we've had Leidig, who's actually building the new structures, involved as well. And this just gives you a list of all the different groups we have involved in the planning, from not only the schools that surround Cook, but the library, the Zone project. We've had the Department of Health, and Regional Health Department involved. They've done some studies of this. The Northeast Community Center has been involved, as I mentioned. We have also teamed up with the State Department of Transportation, and they're going to the Sun, or the Children of the Sun Trail, and involve them. Spokane Transit Authority would involve moving their bus stop down to on Garland. We've presented to all the neighborhood councils in the area, Bemis, Minnehaha, Whitman, all very supportive, and I think they've written letters to the council in support of this. We've involved all of the city services from planning to streets to neighborhood services. And then I believe Councilman Burke has been involved as well on the walkability group, which has been involved with this concept as well. So with that, I'll just let Ty tell you what this chart means, but it just shows you all of the different planning groups. Go ahead, Ty.
Thanks, Mark. Can you hear me okay?
Very good.
Oh, perfect. So our engagement process really started back in June of 2018, and I went back and checked the calendar. It's like June of 2018, wow. So this graphic really just helps visualize the level of engagement that took place. So the different colors show the different types of groups that we met with. In this case, the community, the gray-blue is kind of looking at teachers and staff. We met with the students, the neighborhoods, as Dr. Anderson said, the walkability committee, the Spokane Regional Health District. I think we've had a ton of great input, and the feedback has been incredibly positive. So I'm really looking forward to the opportunities with the development of a community campus spring.
With this city library as well as Northeast. And Greg, you want to kind of give them a feel of what they're seeing here and as it relates to Cook?
Hello, everyone. I'm Greg Forsyth, Director of Capital Projects. So you're seeing our overall campus of the block in Hilliard that Spokane Public School owns. To the east, you see New Tech Skill Center, which has been remodeled and updated in the last 5 years. And now you can see the two major buildings, Shaw Middle School to the west edge and On Track Academy in the middle. And so what we've done is we've created a campus now. One of the things that's happened is you can see that Shaw Middle School has moved down further south, and now it has almost a direct connection to the Northeast Community Center. And that's an important feature that we wanted to do to enhance our connectivity with the facilities for our families at the Northeast Community Center. All of our buses now are controlled within our campus on an internal drive, which means we don't have as much traffic on Cook now with our buses.
With enhanced bus location right on Garland. So I'll let Greg and Ty just kind of walk you through some visuals of what calming Cook could look like. We've kind of used the analogy of calming of Wall Street downtown. It has that same feel up here for the Northeast area.
Start from south and move to the north. So Ty, why don't you go ahead and show what we're doing?
Sure. So we're starting kind of, as Greg said, bird's eye view at the very southernmost point of Cook Street. And what we're going to do in the next progression of slides is kind of walk you through as we're heading north. So this is looking at that new parking area to the south of Shaw Middle School. It's a lot that's currently already utilized. Well, it's dirt, but by the community center. So the hope is that this is, again, kind of a shared use lot. And then moving north, you can feel how it's much more pedestrian friendly with swales, lots of street trees, planting, really to emphasize the pedestrian over the vehicle, because in a scenario where it's pedestrian or vehicle, the vehicle always wins. So as we keep moving north, you can get an idea of where that front entry is and how it leads you across the street. The building is located, as Greg said, quite a bit further south, and that was very purposeful for that direct connection to the community center.
Ty, I think it's important that we do note that there is still parking on the street that connects to the old library location, the Northeast Community Center, for STA handicap drop-offs or to the school. And so we still have that connectivity. But again, as you can see, the surface changes are very similar to Wall, as Dr. Anderson said.
That's great. Just another shot of the front entry. And as we move north, we'll start circling around to the Hilliard Library. So this would be a view kind of looking from the north at the corner, and the new parking area for the Hilliard Library and the student drop-off. So the goal is to create a nice little plaza area out front. And then the next one was more of a zoomed in, showing again the connections across the street, just to give you a feel of what that whole area would be like you're standing in this space. And then a view at how you enter into the Hilliard Public Library parking and Shaw Gymnasium parking, and how the asphalt actually leads you in so that you're encouraged to turn left versus continue down Cook just by the change in material. Anything else you want to add, Greg, to that?
You know, the only other thing I'll add is when we had community involvement, there is a large event. It's a collection event for throwaway materials that the neighborhood puts on. Well, we made sure we coordinated with them, and our parking lot, I think, can accommodate the 12 dumpsters that they bring in for the neighborhood to do their cleanup. And that was one of the processes that we learned about, and we took advantage of their knowledge and we laid it out, and so we can still have that Hilliard cleanup day for the community. And so this is just the overall view of Cook Street when you take it from Empire down where the STA is to the south and all the way to the north. And you can see the connectivity that we've continued, but the nature and the character of this overall campus has been really enhanced and really improved. We also want to make sure that we want that education to spill across the street into our facility for the Northeast Community Center as well, in which we have music facilities, physical fitness facilities, weights, gym, and fitness centers that we think can be coexist with some of the after hours programs that the Northeast Community Center does with some of the seniors. We hope to grow that preschool to post-school connectivity.
We've been discussing with the city as well as Council President Beggs is for the city's half of that street, so to speak, calming it with $800,000. We have built in to both the Shaw Middle School, On-Track Academy, as Hilliard Library, the cost for the district's portion of calming Cook. And then our interest has been to do this all as one project where we would actually this spring be doing the project, start the street portion of the project. If you've been up to Hilliard recently, and up to the library and the school, and both schools are totally out of the ground. Infrastructure's up, starting to get buttoned up for work inside for the winter. So that portion of the project is coming along very nicely. And the long-range plan would be for next spring to start the street work, and then all of the facilities would open in August of 2021 for both the library as well as the school project. So with that, that's kind of the concept we've been working on, and be glad to answer questions.
Yes, Councilmember Burke.
Thank you. This is really awesome. And yeah, I've been pretty heavily involved in this project. And so it's exciting to see it come to fruition. My question is, what are the barriers of making this street not open to cars and other services?
Well, to close a street, it's much more of an extensive process, and we feel that we wanted to keep that the access for the handicapped vehicles closer to our front door, Councilperson Burke, because that was important to us not only at the library but also at Shaw Middle School. So we feel we can gain that limited access or that a measure of uncomfortability for a car to drive continuously through there. So we did not pursue the closure of the street. Closing a street means we have to buy it from the city, and we didn't want to, that's a cost to that process.
Councilmember Stratton.
But with, excuse me, by the way, I love this idea. But with signage and lights, you could kind of create that atmosphere of people driving slow through there, I'm assuming.
Correct. And also the change of surface from asphalt to a concrete surface and the increased amount of planting beds that you've noticed along the side of the street. So a much more tree-scaped and a feeling of more walkability.
Greg, this is Eric Fitzpatrick, the civil engineer working on the project with the AHBL. And one of the other features we implemented to really emphasize the change, but it's not just a continuation of street as well. It's an elevation. As you approach from either end, the elevation, it comes up about 6 inches, so it almost looks like a driveway. It doesn't look like a continuation of a street, which will highly encourage people to follow the asphalt path if they are actually traveling.
Thank you, Eric.
Councilmember Mumm.
Hi there. Can we go back to the overhead, Greg? First of all, fabulous. I love the whole walkable plaza idea. I hope when this is all said and done that you guys put this in for a walkability award, because this just is exactly what the dream is, that you can prioritize for pedestrians. A couple questions I had. One was help us understand as a student here, I'm riding my bike to school, and how do I park my bike and where do I enter then when I'm coming to school?
So if we go, Mike, back to that aerial view, there we go. So we have a 12-foot sidewalk running up the side of Cook for walkability and multimodal transport, and you will go and you will park your bike in the back of the school where it's more secluded and safe. Mark, if you could, it's along the bus loop there, right there. That's really the student plaza, if you can see Mark's. And that's where we want that bike rack to be parked. Now, if you're a library patron, we have bike racks in front of the library as well. We also connect to the future Children of the Sun Trail in 2 locations. One at Regal, and that's where the future connectivity is. We come in from Regal along past the On Track Academy, and then you either go to the north to the library or to the south to the middle school. Or you can come along Empire, which has a bike path as well. That's in the street. And you can join, as you can see, our heavily, our heavy white line that ends right at our bus exit and heads up our 12-foot sidewalk to the south. I mean, to the north, I'm sorry, to the north.
So you have it sounds like you have a really good bicycle plan.
We worked hard with Kate and the city and with Brandon Blankenfork, I think, when
Blank
he,
H.
he was still here. There's been some change, you know.
Okay, and Greg, my last question is, I love the super wide sidewalks. Love that. That's just great for pedestrian emphasis. And I just think it's so creative that we put the trees into the street to meet our code. I just want to make sure we continue that up by the baseball fields. Sidewalks, when they are next to the street, end up getting filled with snow. And so when they don't have that separation there, then we end up not meeting our goals.
And so that's why that sidewalk continues to be 12 feet wide, all the way up to Rich. And we understand that. And then, of course, since it is our property, we'll maintain those as well. But yeah, we got a little squeeze there for ball fields and for our space, but we did make that a 12-foot contiguous sidewalk.
Well, parents like to hang out there too to watch. So, okay. Well, thanks for really modifying this and making it more conducive to interactivity, and excited to see it come forward.
So are we.
And Councilmember Cathcart, did you have a question?
Yeah, really quick. Thanks again for the presentation, guys. I was wondering what sort of signage or what's the messaging that you're envisioning on the signage, assuming in the street remains emphasis obviously being on those with visibility or something like that. But I'm just kind of curious, would the
We lost you.
the signage, is that kind of what you're thinking?
So we are employing Helvectia, who is a signage and wayfinding company that did Riverfront Park. And they're helping us with not only external signage on the perimeter, but internal signage for direction to all of the different components, whether it be the STEM Center in On Track, the Hilliard Library, Shaw Middle School, Northeast Community Center, New Tech Skill Center. Those will all be connected in a campus map, as well as flagged signs that you've seen similar to Riverfront Park. And that's all part of our commitment to this project, our meaning Spokane Public Schools.
But on Cook specifically, though, in terms of limiting access and narrowing that speed, is there going to be signage that says, you know, what type of person or what purpose you may use the rest of Cook, or not? Are we just going to leave it open and just hope that people aren't using it as a
Well, we're going to work with the city planning department on what signage they'll allow us to do, whether we can put slow pedestrians only, or we can put pedestrian crossings. So we'll have to work within the city code officials as far as where we put parking. But if you did notice where our planters bump out, obviously there's no parking there, and we do direct limited on-site parking, so we think we'll be okay. And also making our sidewalk wide enough for 12 feet for bikes, we should be able to eliminate any of that pedestrian bike interaction, causing bikes to go out into the street, and more opportunities there for accidents.
Okay, no, that's great. And I think too, if necessary, and it may not be, but that Cook there could be a great location for some of those speed humps, the really wide, not the small speed bumps, but the really wide ones. It could be a good.
As Eric said, we actually start the street at the north and at the south with that raise feature.
Perfect. Thank you guys very much again. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Thank you all, Dr. Anderson and Greg and your whole team. We've been talking about it. We still have to figure out a special budget ordinance to make the mechanics, but this has been a great collaboration, one of many, and future ones. We really appreciate the chance to not charge the taxpayers twice for transaction costs when they're all benefiting, regardless. So thank you so much. And thanks also, really that whole planning process meant a lot to our community groups to be involved and get something that really works for them. So thanks for that.
Thanks very much.
And we will move on. Looks like I'm up next on the capital improvement plan amendments resolution. So we have the capital improvement plan is getting ready for a vote in a few weeks. And I guess I'm not sure if it's a communication issue or what, but we didn't get the improvements that council passed for the transportation section earlier this year into the plan. And if I understood, so we have a resolution to do that again. It's kind of a repeat of the resolution we already passed in June. And my understanding is if we pass it again, has to go back to the Planning Commission for concurrency evaluation in order to make us eligible for grants. So this is just a touch at committee. I don't think council's changed their mind on which projects they would like to see. So we're just kind of the formality of it. My preference would be that we would just change the plan without doing the resolution, but that's kind of what we're set for now. Councilmember Mumm.
Yeah, just there is a question under neighborhood on page 1, and I don't know if that's how we want to pass it.
All right.
It says, this is already in the plan, but is it enough?
I don't have it right up in front of me, just so.
We may just want to look at what's filed.
Yep. Yep. Sounds good. All right. Seeing no other questions, let's go down to staff requests and street design standards and Spokane Municipal Code updates. Inga Note.
Okay. Good afternoon. Let me share my screen here. Okay, so we took the street design standards to, I brought it to this committee last time in August, late August. And since then, we've made a few changes to it, and it has gone through the Plan Commission hearing process. And I don't know if the findings and conclusions have been published yet, but there was a vote to move these standards forward to the council. So I just wanted to come back to this committee one more time and just kind of touch on the few changes that have been made since I was last here in August. So that's what I have to go through. Here we are in the process. The Plan Commission hearing finished up on October 14th. So a couple of the changes that were made to Table 1 is that we have revised some of the sidewalk and buffer zone dimensions, which is like the planter strip. We did have a few questions from staff and also from a citizen just asking about some of the sidewalk widths. And so now we've kind of settled on 5 foot for most of the sidewalks in the residential and industrial, which does match our municipal code as well. And then 7 feet plus the 5-foot buffer zone for anything that's in the downtown, commercial, form-based code, and centers and corridors. So that gives you basically a minimum sidewalk plus buffer zone, which could be street trees or could be other types of swales or landscaping. But that gives you a total width of 12 feet. And we also have language in here that allows that to go a little wider in areas without any kind of a deviation, because we do have some places where we have existing sidewalk that's wider than that. And then these are the most recent adjustments to Table 1, and these were basically made at the Planning Commission hearing. And so I have not published this version yet on the project webpage, but it'll be up there probably in the next few days. So what we did is we just added a new footnote that talked a little bit more about what the values in this table mean, just pointing out that they're intended to be target values and not necessarily a minimum or a maximum. And there are some that we allow variations on without having to do a formal deviation process through the city engineer. And so that would be things like we would allow some variation in a shared use path width down to 10 feet or up to a wider width without having to do a deviation. We could allow wider stormwater management areas or buffer zones and things like that. Then one of the other major changes was just on the street width. So last time I was here, I was talking about how we wanted to try to not be building streets that are wider than they need to be, these residential streets, just because of the cost long-term and also just the upfront cost and better utilization of the land that's available left to develop. And so we took a look with planning at the widths of streets within the city right now and found that 46% of the city streets are 32 feet or less in width. And so with that in mind, we also took a look at some of the other cities that generally are in the snow belt area and looked to see what their standard residential street width was. And these are all the ones that we could find in the area that were doing 32 feet or less for their standard residential street width. And so we talked with fire and came to an agreement that we can do 32 feet as kind of our residential standard. And this would be like in the lower density where we have single family homes, maybe also in duplex areas. But the idea is when we have homes with garages and driveways that generally you don't need to provide parking on both sides of the street for the entire width. You'll have people parking periodically, but it's not going to be a solid line of cars. And so in locations like this, it's okay to use 32 feet. And then in locations like this, where you may have higher density, maybe you have apartment complexes where you always have overflow parking on the street, these are the type of places where we would allow 36. And we would also allow 36 for industrial zoned areas. So this is what the new table looks like. This would be in, yes.
Can I ask a quick question? If you know the answer, in terms of fire, your conversation with them, what was it about 32 feet that they would allow? But I think I saw on your table that at least one community had 29. I'm curious what's different about maybe their fire apparatus there that's different from ours here.
Probably nothing. It's probably just that they've always used that width, or at some point in time they agreed to go to that lower width. I mean, that we have plenty of streets that are 29 feet as well. It's just,
okay.
What is everybody's comfort level right now with the equipment and with the International Fire Code?
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
So this is what the revised table looks like. You'll see we have there's the 32-foot residential standard with two-sided parking, and then just below that we have 27 feet if you want to do parking on one side, which is what we have currently in the code, so there's nothing different about that. One of the other major changes is we got a lot of feedback in the process about using 2 ramps per intersection for ADA access. And so I think last time I came to this group, we were looking at language that say we preferred 2 ramps per corner, but it wasn't going to be required. And in going through the process, we thought it would, just based on the feedback that we received, it has now been revised to say that we will construct 2 ramps per corner for all new construction and reconstruction projects. So basically any project where we have sufficient funding to redo the sidewalk, we will plan on doing 2 ramps per corner. And then in locations where we're doing preservation work, which if you're familiar with our street preservation process, if we do any kind of grind and overlay between the curbs, we still have to update the curb ramps. And so we're going to try our best to do 2 per corner, but just recognizing that sometimes we may not have adequate funding to do that on those preservation projects. And just to give you a little example here, this is one that was done a few years ago. This is Monroe Street. And just, some of the things that the designers have to work around is we may have historic walls, we may have a really narrow sidewalk to begin with, we may have drainage structures, and so just there needs to be some flexibility still in the code. One last change, this one actually happened today when I was talking with Dan Buller. Apparently we had a WB50 in here as our control vehicle for the residential and industrial and community business and general commercial. And finding out that this is not supported in the software that we use for designing anymore. We have a program called AutoTurn where we basically can run a truck around a corner to see if it's going to hit anything. And the WB50 is not going to be in there anymore. And so also the WB62 is really the standard that most trucking companies use. And so we've updated just these two that are highlighted in red to be the WB62. And then we did make some changes to the clear zone policy. Nothing substantial, it's just some changes in the language. And we also, originally I had this section, this top section of the municipal code as part of this update, and this is the delegation of administration section. And so I had a draft that I had brought forward, but then there's additional reorganization going on the planning and neighborhood services side. And so we decided to put this part off until we can do a full cleanup of the section and address everything that needs to be changed at once. So the three sections that I'll be bringing forward are just the definitions, the street tree requirements, and then the engineering standards. So that's all I had. Any questions on this? I think the next step is just to file it and bring it forward for approval.
Go ahead and volunteer if you have any questions. All right. I'm not hearing any. Thanks so much, Inga.
All right, thank you.
All right. Next up is going to be Kyle from the High System Reservoir.
Thank you, Council President. Before I start kind of talking about where we're at with the outreach to date and some of the sites we've evaluated for the High System Reservoir, I wanted to make sure we took one step back and talked about why we're here, discussed the need for this reservoir, talk a little bit about some of the conservation questions that have been asked. So I'm going to ask Catherine Miller to step in really quick and tee this up for the system need, and then I'll talk a little bit about where we're at and what we've evaluated to date.
Thanks, Kyle. So I did send out to all council members the memo just regarding that hypothetical question that Council President Biggs had asked about what would it take potentially to conserve enough to not have to have a tank to begin with, and wanted to go through that from the sense that it also set up the actual issues with the system today, which are twofold. One of them is our standby storage requirement to hold a certain amount of water if there were an emergency that we couldn't get the pumps to refill the tank, or for any reason the tank couldn't be refilled. You'd have enough water there to service people within the regulations while that time would buy you to respond to the issue to get the tank to refill again. And the other issue is today during peak, we cannot keep up with current demand. So that doesn't speak to future demand that is also going to be coming on the system as we go through. So today, we're not keeping up with that demand. And what's actually happening is, while we don't have the amount of water we're supposed to be holding out in our standby today, we're actually eating into that standby storage that isn't even enough, to meet the requirements. What is there, we're eating into just to handle our peak events that are happening in the summertime. So and from an operations perspective, they are doing a combination of running pumps 24 hours a day, which of course that's not anything you'd ever want to do to a system, to run it constantly that you don't have a chance. Typically you have some downtime to just do simple maintenance. If a bearing is thrown or something issue comes up, you don't ever want to run a system to the actual max. So that piece of it we are augmenting by eating into that storage. So it's a combination of how operations is trying to address that. And in my email that I sent out, I mentioned that there's more complexities to this topic that I felt at 3 pages, it was really probably too much for everyone to go through, so I apologize for that. But just trying to capture that hypothetical conversation in there didn't really attach or even try to address the 3 other zones above the high system tank or high system zone that is actually feeding up to 3 other zones. So that is an impact that's playing out as well. So it's that classic spider web, if you will. When you start poking over here, it starts obviously doing different things across the web. So this is that complexity of our water system that we're dealing with when we talk about trying to get it to be a simple conversation. So I'd love to talk more and answer any questions you have on that in general. The intent was just to understand that those 2 components are playing into our issues. We actually went back just to confirm when it first went into the system or into the 6-year program to acknowledge the need, and it dates back to 2009. And obviously since then, our growth in that area is only exacerbating what's going on. So it's not just a conversation of if, it really is that when in terms of getting to those max operational issues that we've been talking about. Is there any questions on the overall memo or anything I can clear up for you in terms of the topic?
If you went to every other day outside watering, wouldn't that put a lot of relief on what you're currently experiencing in the system?
Right. I touched on, any solution we do come up with has got to be robust, that we can actually deliver on it. So whether it's watering on different days or a requirement to reduce, unless it's a finality, we can guarantee that activity can happen. The reality is it's a gravity system. I can go out today in 27 degrees and turn on all my faucets outside, and there's nothing to stop that water from flowing on a day that it doesn't need to be flowing. So my point is, without that finality of understanding how to control that conversation is kind of that tripping point of any of our solutions. So yes, we can come up with ways to manage that water in different ways, but we have to start with how do you guarantee that happens? And that's the crux of a project that obviously is imminent today. Now, if we were to put in any kind of ways to control our destiny in terms of how much water is being used, we would want to see an actual history of that actually occurring, because there's lots of ways to have the conversation, but there's also lots of outcomes in terms of how successful it is. So I would think that having a record of actual success would be something that you would base future tank reductions on, because we've proven its effectiveness.
Any other questions for Catherine before Kyle moves on?
Well, yeah. I'll jump into the siting if we want to go next, but it sounds like Candace has a question for Catherine.
Go ahead, Candace.
Well, I don't know the system well up there, and so this question may just not be relevant, but are there any tanks that we have up there to assist that could be made larger?
In place larger?
Yes.
And that's the conversation that Kyle will go into in terms of all the different locations. We have locations we own today in terms of putting second tanks next to that are potentially in the mix of the conversation. It certainly is part of it. You also have operation limits in terms of high elevation. You can't just go in there and build, let's be exaggerations here, another 300 feet on top of an existing tank. Because again, gravity flowing systems like we have got to start at certain elevations at the top. And again, a little more complexity, I'm happy to get into it with you. But ultimately, all of the tanks across a particular zone have to end up basically operating in a same elevation. And so it doesn't help us just to add on to any one tank. We have to go beside it and, again, kind of match elevations in order for us to gain more capacity.
And I understand it affects pressure as well, so.
Correct.
All right, Kyle, continue on.
Okay, so just jumping in. So our teams have, both Catherine and my teams have looked at a good dozen or so sites up on the South Hill. We are constrained by the system requirements, so we can't just look anywhere we feel like it. We have to find something in the right location, at the right elevation, near transmission mains. And so we've been charged with finding the least cost, highest functioning site available. So we've looked all over the place, such as Ferris High School, South Complex KHQ area, Lincoln Park, Southeast Boulevard, 31st and Napa, Hamlin Elementary, Hamlin Park, really trying, and then the Garden Park site where we currently have a reservoir. We also just recently completed a public survey related to the consideration of Hamlin Park, and also presented some of that information to the Parks Board and heard some of their questions and concerns. And the survey results are up on the project website right now. And so we're really working to craft a proposal that is responsive to our citizens' desires. We continue to evaluate one or two other sites that may be compatible. But we're really constrained. There's just very few areas that are undeveloped that are sufficiently large enough for the siting and then the actual construction of the reservoir, and that also meet our functional requirements. And you know, this is a tough one to do, because unlike a trail project or something that just has that clear public benefit and you're going to have a body of support behind it. Frankly, a 100-foot tall reservoir isn't going to be really supported. And today, folks turn on their taps and water comes out, and it's beautiful, clean Spokane water. You know, we're kind of just weighing levels of opposition here in a lot of ways, because we're not really going to get this. There's not this obvious need and public outcry to support this new reservoir. So going through, our original site selection was the property acquired at 31st and Napa. But as we moved forward into the initial design stages, the favorability of that site really diminished. The construction itself is likely to need more property acquisition, either permanent or temporary. And we are going to have extensive rock removal, which has really lowered the appeal here. In order to place a tank on this site, we're going to have to take off over 15 feet of basalt rock. And like I said, have to acquire some additional property. So this has just increased the cost to construct there and increased our uncertainty with that site, and dropped it from that top ranking down to a less favorable site. And then certainly one of the sites we've been asked to consider, and was one of the more popular sites in the community survey, was the Garden Park site, where we currently have a reservoir. And this site's really challenging because there's just very little available space left. But because we do own the site and we have the existing reservoir and the piping there, and as well as a pump station, we're really pushing to see if there is any way we can possibly squeeze a tank on that. We're meeting with contractors to see what the premium would be associated with building on such a constrained site and the added risk of the existing infrastructure that's there. One thing that we have been made aware of, should we have to site on the Garden Park tank, is that we would have to close 37th Avenue for the duration of construction, and that's going to be 2 construction seasons. So we're probably talking about, and this is what we did at 14th and Grand, where we had to close 14th during construction. We'd have 37th Avenue detoured for the better part of 2 years if we did land on the Garden Park site. So that's just one other thing to keep in mind. And that's, again, if we can squeeze it in there and understand what the premium for that tight site and the added risk is. So Hamlin Park is still at the top of the list as far as least cost functional site. It's a large site. It's 10 acres. It's flat, it's of sufficient elevation, it's near transmission mains, and it's publicly owned. And just for context, the reservoir would take up in its final configuration right about 1% of the total footprint of the park. Now, when we're under construction, we'll need more like 10 to 12% of the park that would have to be fenced off during construction while the remainder of the park stayed in use. But even though there is certainly opposition to this site, it is the least cost site that meets our system functionality. And one other benefit is that it puts the tank the furthest away from any individual neighbors. Recall, this is a 100-foot tower, and every other site we look at is going to put this tower in several of our neighbors' backyards. So, you know, we understand there's a lot of pushback when you talk about an above-ground piece of infrastructure like this in a park, as opposed to, say, burying a CSO tank in a park. And so, but this is still a really suitable site. And, you know, the tank would actually be the least visible of any other alternative because you'd have a 200-foot tree buffer on all sides of it. So it would be the least visible compared to every other alternative. So right now, our analysis is focused on the differential between our first and second alternatives. Because if we have to go to our second best site because we don't have permission or do not wish to use Hamblin Park, you know, that's something to consider in that differential cost, in that those extra dollars go to a likely out-of-state contractor instead of staying within our community. So that is something we've talked about is, you know, the mitigation that we can offer for the Parks Department due to the ability to use this site, which will be the least cost of our alternatives. So that could go to an investment into our park system. That could go into additional conservation. That was in our survey, the feedback we got from the public was that if there was any mitigation funds, the highest desire would be for more conservation property. So that could even potentially be the 31st and Napa property that we own. We could put that into conservation or pursue additional alternatives. So in essence, the staff is still completing our cost analysis to work on those top three sites so that we can craft a proposal to deliver to the Parks Board and the City Council. We would like to see both bodies concur with our final site selection before we dive deep into the design and really start expending large design dollars at any particular location. So that'll be our next step next time in front of you. So is there any questions that I can answer?
Kyle? Betsy here. So just give me a guesstimation of how long this bill would take. I'm not familiar. From beginning to end, all things go perfectly aligned.
I think construction's probably around 16 to 18 months.
Okay. Thank you.
Winter will have a little bit of effect on that, but going vertical, we can build a lot of it in the winter.
What's the current estimated cost if it was built at Hamblin?
I knew you were going to peg me with a tough one. I think it's right around $6 million, somewhere close to that, plus or minus.
Also, I know there's been some talk, this isn't the highest elevation in the system in this area. What's the possibility of moving it even farther south and then using it as, again, kind of a gravity feed during when we wanted to shut the pumps down for a while and also for backup in case there was a system failure?
So could you be more specific? You said just moving south, like you're talking about South Complex or something like that?
Yeah, there was, at some point, the idea was the top of this tower needs to match the top of the other two towers, I think, something like that. But I just wondered if it could go into another zone than that zone that it's serving.
Well, it has to be connected to the zone that it's serving. So that means it has to grab those transmission mains that are there. So the further south you go is that further, you can't, connect it to the transmission mains and the next going up, you'd have to be the high system transmission mains. And so those are down there, 33rd and 37th are kind of the two east-west runs of those mains there. So every block you go south, you're at, I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but it's something like $100,000 to $150,000 a block that you move.
Kyle, this is Dan. Can I inject here?
Please do.
It's about, this is Dan Bowler. It's about $500 a running foot. So each block, if a block is 300 feet, it's about what Kyle said. Also, Hamblin Park is the highest point on the South Hill that's anywhere close to, I mean, obviously if you go to the east to Browns Mountain, which is a couple of miles away, you can get higher. But in the area that we need to be near to, within 5, 6, 7 blocks of the transmission mains, Hamlin Park is the highest point on the South Hill.
Thanks. Other questions, comments? And when do you expect to hear back from the park board?
So we've discussed being in front of the park board next month. I am not 100% confident if we will have our cost analysis completed on the other two sites. I don't want to rush it. I want to make sure, because when we make a proposal to the parks board, we're going to have to make a proposal about the mitigation as well, so that they can understand the full context of what we're proposing. So it might be the December parks board meeting before we're truly confident in the number that we can be talking about.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for both to you and Catherine and Dan continuing our education on water engineering. We'll get a certificate soon. So, thanks. Scott and I discussed putting rate setting at the back of this agenda so we can get to these other things first. So that would bring up the Comcast cable television franchise from Marlene. And she said this before, but just a reminder that it's only the cable portion of Comcast, not the broadband or phone part of Comcast. But go ahead, Marlene.
Thank you, Council President. We were here in July with pretty much the same update. We've had a few minor things that had to be worked out. So now we have a draft franchise ready to go for Comcast. The franchise highlights the 10-year deal, franchise fee of 5%. Utility tax also is charged there at 6%. That's on gross revenues. We have the PEG channels. We have 6 channels, 2 in high definition and 4 in standard definition. City Cable 5 retains its location on the dial, channel 5 in standard def and 325 in HD. Our PEG financial support is 0.7% of gross revenues for PEG capital costs, and these fees support the capital expenses for the city's government access channel, as well as for community-minded television and for the education access channels. The technology, this is a legacy system. Comcast maintains a hybrid fiber coax, fiber to the node architecture. So that's a little bit different. Councilmember Cathcart wanted to know where some of the differences were. With TDS, this is one of them. TDS is going to put it in all fiber to the home, but it's a new system. So Comcast is this hybrid system. The service area, Comcast service area is the entire city, and annexed areas will be added to the service area within 12 months of notification of that annexation. They will also agree with all the standard things around our pavement cut policy and so forth. The only other differences between this and TDS is TDS includes the build-out schedule for their system, and it also gives them some reprieve on payments. They're quarterly at first, whereas we've obviously kept Comcast at that monthly payment schedule for franchise fees and utility taxes.
Any questions for Marlene? All right. Thanks, Marlene. Looks like we have Raylene and Angela on an ordinance amendment that would create some more revenue from the industrial pretreatment program that will help us keep our utility rates and sewer stable, even though we're adding quite a few personnel. So, not sure.
So just for the
This is Raylene Jeanette. This is for the pretreatment ordinances. It's a required update based on the latest EPA modeling as far as that goes, and new regulations that EPA is putting out, and it's in line with our current procedures. Some of those new ordinance pretreatment requirements kind of deal with new pharmaceutical hazardous waste, stuff like that. The current fees are outdated, not reflective of the costs for this program, and you guys will be seeing those coming forward in a public rule. We're going to pull them out of the SMCs, so you'll see that soon. I want to highlight that as we put in the rate setting, the main purpose is to adhere to the Clean Water Act and state law. Objectives are to prevent the pollutions from interfering from plant processes and operations pass through to the river, as well as protect city personnel and the public from unsafe conditions that these industries could have an effect on. If there's any questions?
Any questions for Raylene? All right, we have not gotten our certificate on water treatment yet, so you're going to have to hang with us on that. Okay, next we have Catherine Miller again on Northwest Spokane Stormwater Study.
Thank you, Council President. I'm going to go ahead and hand this over to Mark Papich. He is the senior engineer that's going to be overseeing the study.
Thanks, Catherine. Can everybody see the photo up on my screen okay?
Nope, it's black.
I'm not sure what's...
There it is.
Better now?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, Catherine. So this item is this is for a consulting contract with Osborne Consulting Engineers. We've been working with them to complete a stormwater study in the northwest area of the city, which is kind of those two highlighted basin areas that you can see there. This is similar to work we've done in Hazels Creek and the West Plains. But the goal of this study is really several things, really. One is to delineate the stormwater basins, and then most importantly is to quantify the stormwater we have draining to these facilities, and for them to evaluate this and provide us recommendations for how we can maybe better manage this. So that's kind of the gist of it. I don't know if you guys have any specific questions for this.
Hi, this is Candace. Mark.
Yep.
Boy, thank you. I think this does need to be looked at. When we had that big storm event, it really filled up the streets. And as you know, that's an extremely steep draw into that area. It also is a very highly trafficked area. So I had a question about the connectivity between the Austin Draw and you call it an infiltration facility. Maybe you can explain that. And I heard at one point that had sort of a problem with it. It was either punctured through to the aquifer or something. Can you kind of talk about that?
So there's really two facilities here. One would be the Austin Draw, which is this kind of bluish green blob here is the termination point of it. And when Austin Draw terminates here, it actually goes down country homes and ends up at the Price and Wall facility that the county maintains. So that's one facility that we're talking about. The other facility is we call it the 5 Mile Infiltration Facility, which are these two big pits. They're on the corner of Francis and Maple. So really two separate facilities, but we're going to have the consultant analyze both of them. There currently is no interconnection between the two of these.
Okay. So tell me, will they be looking, like I see you've got the Austin Draw drainage basin delineated here. Will they be looking also, how that works through the park and everything too, sort of the whole area, or just the two at the bottom?
Yeah, they'll be taking a really kind of a macro look at the whole basin. I mean, going even catch basin to catch basin probably and really diving into it. What you see up here now is just kind of a rough delineation and it's fairly old, so they would be kind of going through and updating all this stuff.
Okay, so I don't know if it feeds into it, but there's a spring that comes out on Cedar Road. In fact, there was a homeless person doing her laundry there last week before the weather went bad. I don't know if you want to include some of that, or you're just trying to stay off that whole county area.
Well, as it sits today, we would probably stay out of there, but we could certainly look into whether that's worth including.
Well, it's just because there is water that comes out of that side, and Cedar Road is in the city, but then it goes to the county to the right of it. So the water that I'm talking about, the spring, is actually inside the city. I just thought I'd mention it because I don't know if it makes it all the way down to the termination area or not. I think it does. You might want to look at it.
Yeah, we'll definitely, the consultant would definitely look into it, and if it does end up going into Austin Draw, they would definitely include that as part of the study. So.
Well, it runs along Cedar Road right now, just along the side, so it might. So thank you. I appreciate you looking at this. I'll be curious to see what the outcome is.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Council President, I was just inquiring the length of the study.
Yep.
Timeline.
The timeline of the study, yeah. So we're hoping they can start probably around maybe late this year, or probably likely the beginning of next year is when they would start. And we would probably expect that to run, at least 6 months. I mean, I have a timeline, but I don't have it in front of me. I could certainly get you something more specific, but I think it's at least 6 months.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Thanks so much, Mark.
Yep.
And Kyle, you're up for the next two, the MOU between the library and Public Works for stormwater number 26, and then the school district interlocal agreement.
Sounds good. Thank you. We have two items up for consideration. Some similarities to them, but let's talk about them each individually. So the MOU with the library is to memorialize and commit the resources for the work that was originally included in the CSO 26 construction project. As part of that project, we used some of the library's property on the west side of the building for our laydown area, and then we also impacted the northeast corner of the parking lot when we were working in Lincoln Street there. And we had that all designed and bid out with all the agreed upon improvements, but then this was actually before even the library bond passed, and we had all that work bid out ready to go. So the library approached us, asked if we would consider withholding those improvements so that they could, in essence, not have to work around finished, completed improvement areas around the north side of their building, and also let their own architect kind of reshape the way that we were going to improve that. So we just basically installed a pedestrian facility and went from the back of the sidewalk and deleted everything behind that so that the so that the library could construct those improvements. So this MOU is the full calculus of all those improvements that we pulled out of the CSO 26 project, and we're directly sending those funds over to the library to be used for the same set improvements. And there's a little two piece of this. One is the improvements that were around the library itself, and then the other was a secondary request from the library to delete the south half of Lincoln paving, because their contractor wanted to put an elevator there, and they wanted to, again, really be able to disturb and disrupt that area on the north side of Lincoln. And so there's also a credit for the paving there, too. So there's two components to that, plus all the tax associated with the street improvements versus the property improvements. And that would all come out of what was originally to be a part of the CSO 26 project and go directly to the library to ensure that they, with just the caveat that they have to use it for those improvements.
I have a quick question. When we started on this journey, I know the Spokane Falls Boulevard was designed so that we could close it off on weekends during the summer make it a plaza for activities. I'm assuming that's not going to be available until the library's done now because of the North Lincoln side of it. But when do you think the first time conceivably is so that people can start getting ready to program those events?
I'd say that would be, I think you're spot on with that. As soon as the library is open, it might be a little before then when they're out of Lincoln Street and they're doing some of the final elements. I don't have their completion date in front of me. But yeah, you're spot on as far as when that would be available and when we'd have Lincoln reopened.
Okay, great. Okay.
Any other questions on the library MOU?
All right. Councilmember Cathcart, are you raising your hand or not? Okay. All right.
Just waving friendly.
Okay. Next one.
So the next item is also me. This is an interlocal agreement with Spokane Public School District. So as you know, the Engineering Construction Management Office is going away with the construction of the Northeast Middle School. And time is really of the essence for us to get off of that property. So one of the ways we look to expand our partnership with the school district was to utilize their contractor that is going to be building the Northeast Middle School in order to build out our our office space inside the fleet shop over by the water department. So this is a really cool opportunity for both of us, frankly, because they went and got state approval, and they're going to be using the GCCM alternative delivery method on their build out. So we get to actually piggyback on that through an interlocal agreement. We have our own contractual component. It'll have complete bookends on it as far as this early scope of work, because it'll actually be before they start. They'll be doing all the site work and the grading for the middle school. And then over the winter months, their contractor is going to do some of the construction and then bid out the rest of the package so that our office is ready as soon as available in the spring. And this is really a great advantage to both parties, because we're going to save a bunch of time on doing a full-blown procurement of construction documents through the city. We also get the added benefits of using a GCCM contractor, so much more engagement from the contractor as construction manager. Yet we'll still have all the scopes of work bid out. Our head of the construction management office, Joel Graff, is going to be the project manager on the city side, and then the school district has their own project manager. And so we're working together hand in hand, and this interlocal agreement is just a direct cost reimbursement from the city to the school district to pay the contractor for this scope of work.
Any questions on that?
This is Karen. I have a question.
Go ahead.
So that means that the school district gets the contractor through both projects, and then we pay the school district. Is that kind of close?
Yeah, exactly. So they've already gone through a competitive procurement process to select the highest qualified contractor and construction management firm.
Is it local? Are they both local?
Yeah, it's Boughton Construction. So yeah, it's a local Spokane firm.
Okay.
And exactly, they will take our design that we're working on right now, and they will bid that out and deliver it, and we will reimburse the school district as they pay the contractor.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay. Thanks. And I think that's all for that. And then we're going to have an update on Transportation Benefit District and the fate of I-976 from Clint Harris and Kevin Bacanto.
Good afternoon, Council. The last time the CTAB met was back in July, and at that time they met to finalize the 2019 annual plan. The team or the committee had basically been not meeting just because of I-976. waiting on a determination from it. As most people are aware, I-976 was ruled unconstitutional. And so we're moving forward to get the CTAB back together and to get that moving forward to get the 2021 plan built. Basically, the there are several parts to it. Some of it is to confirm the funding. Right now, the initial reports that I've seen, it looks like approximately $6.8 million are going to be available for programming, and that leads to a lot of the challenges of how much can be brought in and completed in 1 year. So we'll be looking to resurrect the old plans that were available, find out what projects had already been approved, and then verifying what design and the engineering groups have for capacity to absorb this in 1 year. We're kind of behind the curve, if you would, for getting these projects out and available. Normally, those projects would be going through design at this time, so everybody's going to have to work hard to get this through. Do you want to add something else, Kevin?
Really not much to add. I think Clint summarized it well. Once that touch point with CTAB has occurred, and we have that list of preferred projects for 21, and that dialogues occur with design, my role's kind of more on the periphery to do the final scoping to turn that over to design for construction in 2021.
I have a question. Did we spend, I know we were, planning for the worst. So we did some TBD inspired work this year. Is any of that we paid for with streets dollars, I think, was any of that work overlapped so that we could pay streets back for the work that we did this year?
I'll take that one. This is Scott. So for council's memory, before 976 went into place and after the street levy was passed by the citizens, we took TBD dollars, which was running around $3 million annually thereabouts, and we paired that with a couple of $1 million out of the street department that used to be going towards arterial streets. We repurposed those towards residential. So we were generally before 976, we were generally about $4.5 to $5 million that was available. So when 976 went into place, we put a halt on spending any of the TBD dollars, and we continued to spend the $2 million or thereabouts dollars that are sitting in the street department. So we don't have to do a payback. We now have more dollars available that we get to go out and program and kind of prop up the residential street investment program, along with the unpaved streets that we worked with council on building a little mini program around as well.
Okay.
Is that helpful, Brian?
Yeah, I think what I was angling for is the $800,000 for Cook Street. If we did an SBO from the streets budget to that, I'm just wondering if we could immediately backfill that with TBD dollars, since I don't think Cook Street would be eligible for TBD dollars, probably. But I don't know. So.
Okay. I mean, it's a residential street. There's certainly.
Oh, is it? Okay, is Cook residential?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Yeah, just given, and the nice thing about that is that those are dollars that are programmed that aren't going to impact our engineering, because we're just giving the money straight over. Yeah. So. Okay. All right.
Council President?
Yes.
It's Catherine Miller. Just wanted to clarify, we're wanting to make sure we understand the amount of funds that will be available for this program, just so Kevin's not working on projects that maybe the funding is moving to somewhere else. It would be helpful when council's able to communicate of the 6.8, if 100% is coming over, so we can make sure we program to that amount or whatever the number is.
Yeah, no, great point, and that's why I was asking questions to find out. But we'll probably be doing some kind of special budget ordinance shortly for the $800,000, and I just wanted to know what the options are. But We obviously can't vote on that at this committee right now, so we won't, but we will get that clear shortly. Make sure we've got, I guess, 5 votes for an SBO. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. Anything else on that? Okay. Then that brings us back to our last matter, which is more on rate settings from Scott Simmons. Take it away, Scott.
Thanks, Brian. And just one more piece on the residential. I know there's some pent-up demand with the lack of funding that we had for the last couple of years. I know there's also some work in District 1 with Michael and Kate on the NSC projects that are impacting some residential streets over there, Ralph Street, Carlisle. So I think there's really some good opportunities to deploy those dollars into some really targeted areas that could be very helpful. Okay, so today it seems like we've been talking rates for about 5 months now, and I think it's because we have. So Marlene's going to walk us through kind of our final touch point. This is a recap of our water and wastewater rates. I'll be reading some ordinances at Council's 3:30 meeting today, specifically around both water and wastewater. So this is just another touch, a recap of what we talked about in our recent study sessions and what you can expect to see in the ordinances coming up. So Marlene, with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Deleted them all.
So for us?
Reword.
Sorry, I'm trying to indicate to my husband that I'm talking. Sharing the kitchen table during COVID has been challenging. Anyway, so we're going to go over that recap of those rates. So here is the financial projection for water wastewater. So this includes the 2.9% rate increase generally across these areas of our rates. Reduction in the capital plan, as we went over with you in August, and cost recovery for services around pretreatment, septic haulers, and water tap and meter fees. You can see the good news for this approach is that we have decent amounts of money in those reserves in that green box or green circle, and you can see where we reduced some of the capital items to be able to manage capital construction going forward. Our water proposal is 2.9% increases for each of the 3 years, 2021, 22, and 23, and to continue our work around reductions of distribution system leakage and ensuring system resiliency for now and the future. We also are going to update the residential consumption tiers to encourage conservation. We are going to look at the commercial tier structure in 2021 so that we can really get a look at this really a much more complex set of customers in that commercial part of our system. So we really want to make sure we understand it before we promote a new structure for them. So we're going to come back to you in 2021 with that. Also, we're going to update those fees for service to ensure cost recovery, and that's for the water tap and meter fees in this case. And we're going to add capital charges for water-only and sewer-only customers.
Okay.
And here is the wastewater proposal. This will be a 2.9% rate increase for each of the 3 years. And we'll be accommodating the additional operational needs for NLT and CSO. That includes 15 people that are in the budget for 2021. We won't have those for NLT. We won't be able to obviously have all those ready to go by January 1, so that's stepped into in our financial projections, plus extra people for CSO. We'll be also protecting water quality and supporting resiliency with this plan, and we are going to recognize some weakness in our revenues that we talked about as a result of COVID. And we'll be updating the rates and fees for pretreatment and septic haulers. So here's a rundown of the rate and fee changes. It's a 2.9% general rate increase. We have the revised use tier for residential customers, which we'll take a look at here again. And we're going to review those commercial water use tiers for 2021. Our cost recovery is around septic haulers and pretreatment and water tap and meter fees. We also have the capital rates for water only and sewer only. Here's the residential water consumption tiers. Remember, our median usage in the summer is about 23 units a month, and our year-round median usage is 8 units a month. We're going to be incentivizing customers to stay at that 25 units or less and maintain affordability of lifeline needs. So you can see the changes in the table. We add a couple more units to those lower rates so that the second tier now goes to 12 units. We break up what was previously a rather large third tier and then add a fifth tier over 45 units. And these tiers do work like stairs, so you always get charged the lowest for those low water usage numbers. And then capital charges. So this was a little bit of a change from the last time we were able to work this out. We have been working on our water rate structure. And so we have determined going forward that the capital plan looks at about 40% for water projects and about 60% for wastewater projects. So that's how we're splitting the integrated fee for those water-only and sewer-only customers. And these include both customers inside the city and outside the city. So you'll see that breakdown for both of those classes of customers. And these changes would be going forward January 1. Our code was really clear that all customers were supposed to be paying a capital charge, and that was the integrated capital charge. So this prorated approach really is just a benefit for the customers. And then here's a rundown of the T investments. We're going to have those investments to operate the NLT and CSO systems. And we're going to do investments around water conservation. The Water Conservation Master Plan that you adopted this summer projects just over $500,000 a year for that water conservation program. And just for your information, that's up from around $250,000 in just 2018. So that's a doubling of investment in water conservation. And it's in addition to investments we're already making around reducing system leakage and things like irrigation upgrades for our park system. We also will have the program to support residential needs around septic tank elimination, repairs of private side sewers, and elimination of long service lines in water. And so we're working on that program and expect to bring something forward to council soon on how we can work with our customers to get these projects taken care of. And this is how we meet your principles around simplicity, stability, sustainability, and equity and affordability. Here are the ordinances and resolutions that are going to come forward. We briefed the first three at your 3:30 meeting last week around solid waste. And then Scott's going to talk about these at 3:30, but there's your 2.9% increase for water, 2.9% increase for wastewater, the change to the capital to account for those water-only and sewer-only customers. And then we're also going to implement the PDA rate that's anticipated in the ILAs around the PDAs. It seems like now is a good time to go ahead and codify that rate as well. And then we'll bring forward the information around pretreatment, which has an ordinance and a resolution coming forward, and then water tap and meter fees, which will have a resolution only. That septic fee that we talked about is actually in the wastewater main ordinance, and those revised tiers also in the water revised ordinance. And here is what a bill would look like for an average customer with 15,000 gallons of usage per month. And we can see that actually the increase for 2021 is only about $1.67. It's less than the 2.9%, and that's a result of those tier changes. So really for a typical customer, they are going to actually see lower than a 2.9% increase for 2021, which is a good thing in a year of a pandemic. That is that. Do you have any questions?
Any questions from Arlene? Any questions from Arlene or Scott?
Yeah, I've got a question, Marlene. I thought I had heard, and maybe I misheard this, so correct me if I'm wrong, that there was a proposal to, instead of 2.9%, increase it 4 or 4.5%. Is that something that you're looking at, and do you have what those numbers would would look like in terms of the tiers for water?
I can speak to that, Councilmember Cathcart. We were looking at that because we thought we had to recapture more of the 1.5 million costs and additional personnel. But once we really dove deeper into the numbers that Scott Simmons provided us, we realized that that wasn't needed to do that. So that's not on the table.
Okay. Perfect. That answers that. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, is that it, Scott, for that section?
That's it. Giving everyone back about 8 minutes.
Okay. All right. All right. That is the end of this month's PIES meeting, and so we'll see you all in a month, and we'll see many of you at 3:30 in a few minutes. So we're adjourned.